Everyone is vulnerable to being pinned when life plays hardball, whether it is a physical or mental health condition. No one can stand alone. For those who are not pinned, appreciate that it could be you or loved one someday. So when you see a chance to help someone, please do. They are not weak, they are pinned. Even a slight hand up and a listening ear can begin seriously lightening the load, change, or save a life. Help end stigma. Move from being pinned to purpose. Time for a hand up.
Hello, everyone. It's Jeff Moore. I'm the founder of the Pin to Purpose podcast. And it's a great pleasure for me today to be joined by our guest, Scott Kelsey, who's the founder of Sherrapy, and also an excellent hockey player, a former pro hockey player, so a much better hockey player than me. I'm very passionate about the sport too, so we may be able to talk a little bit about that at some point. But I'd like to just mention a couple of things about the podcast for those of you who haven't seen it before. So Pin to Purpose was founded to help shatter stigma, to have conversations about mental health and well-being, and to give people a hand up on their healing journeys. And so today I'd like to talk a little bit, or maybe read a little bit about Scott's bio, and then I'll pass it over to him to tell everybody a bit more about himself, and then we'll get into our conversations. So Scott being the founder of Sherrapy, which centers on the concept that human connection is a key component to success and happiness. By sharing our life experiences, we learn and grow together, forging lasting connections and contributing to society in meaningful and impactful ways. And I'm looking forward also to speaking with Scott about several of the other things that he's involved with and has been involved with. I've been reading about Sherrapy Military. And Scott, also you're being a member of the Lived Experience Council for One Mind, and also previously founder of Edge for Athletes. So why don't I pass it over to you, Scott, if you want to say a few more introductory words of introduction for our listeners and viewers today.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the invitation to be on this podcast. I think it's amazing work you're doing, and it really aligns with kind of my core feelings about our experiences and how best we can share them, to help others, to give them that hand up, and maybe, even just listening to them, creates just that environment for people to feel not so alone. So I appreciate that immensely. Like you said, I grew up in South EU in Central New York, a pretty good hockey town. Was fortunate to play youth hockey, high school hockey, and actual college hockey in that same town. And then, was further fortunate on being able to, stretch out my playing career about 5.5 seasons professionally. So after that, just a couple quick bullet points. I took a job up in the Princeton, New Jersey area. That's where I've worked and lived for the past 27 years. So with a wife, a young son, 7, and a daughter who's 10. And no surprise, they're playing hockey. And the best part of it is because they want to.
That's great. That's great. So Scott, maybe you can share a little bit about your journey, your personal journey, and the reasons that have eventually led you to the type of work that you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. So like I said, grew up small town, went to a small college, and then kind of obviously played after that, and everything seemingly was it was great. I was living my childhood dream of playing hockey. I'll mention this now. A lot of times when I share this story, I mention it later in it. But midway through my career, probably when I was about 25, I wasn't feeling, all that well. And some people kind of noticed some things that were off about me. So I went and saw our team doctor, and our team doctor pointed me in terms of a psychiatrist, and then it ended up being a neuropsych battery. And when I thought I was suffering from post-concussion syndrome, which was in the hockey news, everything, Pat LaFontaine that day, the doctor basically, after all the analysis, the test and everything, said, I think you have a pretty good case of anxiety and depression. And I didn't agree with him. Back then it was the mid 90s, late 90s. So I don't think it was because I'm a male. It was not because I was a hockey player. I just didn't really know much about it, right? I didn't really know many people that suffered from anxiety or depression. So, kind of bottled that up, didn't do anything really about it, got through the next couple of years, retired, took a job up here in Princeton, struggled a little bit in my transition. And then, life, through work and everything, kind of saw, some goals that I wanted to hit financially, personally. Everything seemed great, but behind it all, I was dealing with, this anxiety, depression. And as a single guy at the time, I could manage it in the dark, so to speak. I could go home early. I hang out with my beautiful dog, but I wasn't. I was suffering, and that went on for a while. And as job responsibilities escalated, as I got married, had kids, which I'm so blessed to have. As more responsibilities, were put in front of me, I I was essentially a ticking time bomb, so to speak. Right? I managed well, looked good on the outside, but I was struggling even more on the inside, and I really wasn't proactively doing anything about it. And then on April 7th, 2018, I suffered a severe traumatic brain injury with a fall down our stairs at our home. I'm fortunate that my wife found me in time where, I didn't succumb to the hemorrhages and bleed out and die. So from there, I was given a strategy by the neurologist, by our doctors, because I needed to heal from this pretty significant brain injury. I don't recall 3.5 months after the injury, but I knew that I needed to isolate, be in a dark room, obviously not drive. And as soon as I started, there was a lot of regret, there was a lot of worry, I was afraid of what is life going to look after this. I started to kind of put things together and realize I just let life get to me and I wasn't managing it well. So that led to seeing a psychiatrist regularly, attending. I stopped drinking through support of 12-step, which has been incredible for me, mentally, physically, emotionally. And I started to get involved in the other peer support groups, Brain Injury Alliance of New Jersey. I started doing some advocacy work with some other entities and learning how to share my story to help others. And that's really where I started to, after speaking with some other people who had relatable stories, brain injuries, other setbacks in life, where I really started to see how powerful just sitting with somebody who, number one, will give you the time of day, number two, would listen to you, and number three, went through similar experiences, not exactly the same, but similar. And they were giving me that kind of hand up, as you call it, right? They were giving me, and it started to lessen my worries. Like I had somebody to talk to, they managed to, they managed their way through it and manage whatever they were dealing with post their brain injuries or their addiction, stuff like that. So it really was a thought of why aren't these resources more available? And how could we build something where people have the ability just to show up as they are, speak what's on their mind, share similar stories, and feel a sense of connection, but also feel a sense of purpose that what they may have gone through while it was challenging, depleting, all these things at the time, they have value. So that was really the initial thought behind the creation of Sherrapy.
Such an important story, and thank you for sharing that. I mean, I hope that listeners to this, that there will be people who are feeling pinned that will just take a lot of hope with that. We'll look at Sherrapy and we'll realize, as we keep trying to emphasize, our common humanity means we can all kind of get pinned by very tough times, and that's normal, understandable. I mean, you played hockey at the professional level. I remember being knocked out on playing in a rugby game, and I'm taken off the field. If you're knocked out, it's not a matter of being weak. You're in a weakened state. You've got to heal. You've got to get off, and there's a healing period. And I think it's so important to keep bringing stories out to reframe and tell people who are listening, who are feeling shame or feeling concern about putting a hand up and trying to ease some of that weight, not doing it alone, as what we're going to hear more about Sherrapy. I mean, it's so thank you, Scott. These are such important stories. And again, I hope people listening will grab onto this and just remind themselves to, if they're in a tough time, that they don't need to do it alone. You know, and it is the holiday season too. So for some people who are feeling a bit, you know, more isolated, or they don't have family around and things like that, it's important to find that community. And so it's great that you've been building this resource as well. Maybe we can keep going from there. And you know, I wanted to ask you, you know, some of the earlier experiences too, or like, if before we get into the details of Sherrapy, I understand you were the founder of Edge for Athletes. And so I don't know if there's anything you'd like to speak about with that as well.
Yeah, the Edge for Athletes was created out of, and it still exists. It's kind of in that startup space, right? So that goes to serve college and professional athletes, retired athletes, in terms of a way, everything from mentorship to, you know, a community that can live with inside Sherrapy, right? But also provide other resources. So with Edge, you know, we've had a tremendous amount of people with interest in it. You know, and we've done a lot of work on it. You know, we haven't, you know, really turned up the throttle on it, really, just to see if it sits better alone on its own, where somebody can grow it and plug it in terms of, we do have an athlete community within our Sherrapy platform, or we just fold it into Sherrapy. So, but there's a tremendous amount of, you know, there's a tremendous amount of great organizations out there doing work for college athletes. You know, a lot of the major league sports right now are providing more support services, whether it's mental health support and other services. So that's great to see, you know, but there's a large audience out there, from current college athletes to professional athletes to ex-athletes, that need support. So I'm a big fan of collaboration. If we could be another trusted resources in that ecosystem, then, you know, Edge will stand a chance to do some good things in the future.
It's fantastic. And you know, I've seen that, I've felt that, and athletes who are super dedicated to a significant goal, if they don't hit it, still outstanding athletes, but that's a big disappointment, or an injury that obviously takes them out, or yes, the end of college, they can't continue playing certain team sports unless they're getting to the pros. All of those create mental adjustments. So I think, you know, that's fantastic that that's part of what you're doing as well, because there is that need for a transition often. And you know, if the self-identity is majorly focused there, then to balance it out with so many other, you know, great things in life, hopefully as well.
Yeah, well said, Jeff. Yeah.
Maybe I can also ask you, and maybe this is also a subgroup of Sherrapy, but I was reading a little bit about Sherrapy Military, so I'd like to invite you to talk about that as well.
Yeah. So you know, as we were building out kind of the offering in terms of providing, you know, the resource of virtual facilitated peer support, right? We looked at a couple different, let's just say, verticals, right? Earlier on, like talking to some VCs, talking to some people that had started up, and, you know, along the notion of, well, you can't help everybody, although I believe we can help a lot of people. You know, we put some focus on athletes with my connections and history of playing sports and my story there, and then on military. And it, you know, my brother served 26 years in the military, special forces. My dad served. You know, lots of friends served. You know, we all have a lot of friends that probably served. And we looked in terms of what transition looked like after, you know, their career, whether it's a 4-year career, whether it's a 26-year career like my brother. And there's a lot of good resources out there, right? There needs to be more, just like any, you know, community, whether it's athletes or military. And we really found that we could provide a non-clinical space to get some of that community camaraderie that existed when these, you know, veterans were in the military, that they may not have since their departure from the military. And so we elected to at the point with talking to some veterans and friends of mine that have built organizations that support the military. We elected to get Sherrapy Military registered as a 501c3 charity. And that is with the help of some, veterans right now. One that's come on as our chief wellness officer. That is another entity that we feel like we can, yes, it's going to take time. We can grow, get the donations, and create awareness of what we're doing to help not only our veterans out, but active military and also our first responder community, which aligns a lot with other entities that do work in the space. So, yeah, that's freestanding as an entity, isn't 501c3, but it plugs into Sherrapy for all the other resources. So they can get to standalone in terms of have their military or first responder communities that are facilitated by military or first responders, non-clinical again. But they also get access to our broader, what we call Sherrapy Global, which is just a mix of everything, right? Which has been incredible to see. We've got active military, retired military now plugging into some of our other get-togethers and really enjoying it.
No, it's incredible. Congratulations for that. And it's close to my heart because I think I may have told you at one point, but my dad was a World War II veteran, and he was he was the oldest dad of any of my friends. He was actually born in 1906, so he was already retired when I started school. And I keep in my phone a couple of letters where he actually, in order to serve overseas, he had to ask for a demotion because he was 36 and already had been in the reserves for a while. So they said they didn't need him. But I have these 2 letters that I've kept in my phone to say I need to go, and he went. So my mom, my mom, who's passed away a couple of years ago, kept his PTSD from us because we heard about different things later. And so, I have great admiration for what you're doing and great respect for people who have served and are serving. And, and to me, I would say, like, I didn't serve in the military personally, but some of his relatives too, I feel that affinity. And, one of the key things in Pin to Purpose is really the statement, like, people are not weak, but they can be in a weakened state, and so a lot of people who come back with having lived tough situations, I think they're heroes. And I think, they're far from being weak. They're the opposite, but they can be in a weakened state because of trauma or because of the weight they're carrying on them. So I think the efforts of everybody to create community, or people creating community such as yourself, are tremendous. And so I think it's super important, and thank you or congratulations for doing that too.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And thanks to your dad for serving. I mean, that's an incredible story, right? Like, he wasn't a dodger, so to speak. He wanted to go back in when they were saying, hey, you can't go back in, but I want to go back in. That's incredibly admirable. And yeah, I just think, like, I'm not far removed from the military, outside of me, turning down a nomination to the Air Force Academy, which I probably was scared at the time. Like I said, my family, but I don't, I believe we can build something there, and we built something where I don't need to, be the head of it, right? Like, we want to get something built, hire the right people with Sherrapy Military where they can, yes, plug into Sherrapy as we build that out in our offerings. But, I think, hey, if this needs to be built, or I feel it needs to be built as an additional resource to help this community out, then why not build it? Right?
Yeah, no, tremendous. Well, another topic to talk about for a little bit now is, we are both global ambassadors with the Real Mental Health Foundation. And for those of you not familiar with that, Sean Lesser has created a tremendous global organization with over 500 ambassadors, which are the male volunteers, and over 100 allies, which are the women who are also supporting the cause. And it's about helping 10 million and one men by 2030 with their mental health, and also helping to catalyze over $10 billion of investment by 2030 in the mental health space. So, it's thanks to that I have been able to, Scott, and great people who are making contributions and have had lived experiences. And so hats off to Sean again and the whole team. And I know I'll pass it to you, Scott, if if you'd like to say anything also about your involvement and engagement in the Real Mental Health Foundation.
No, thanks, Jeff. And I'm so glad, number one, first off, that Sean came up with the idea, because we would have never met. And I would have never met, dozens and dozens and dozens of incredible people. Like, we could probably fill our plates 24 hours a day for a long time, having even 10-minute conversations with all the ambassadors. It's incredible. Like, it's one of those things that I feel like I need to do more of. And I try, right? But we've got to start up. We're raising money. We're building community. But I can tell you, like, my story with him is I don't know how we connected at first, but it was early on kind of his thoughts behind it. And I sat with him. He was visiting Princeton, New Jersey with his wife and daughter. And we sat for coffee, and I love it. And hopefully Sean will agree with it, is that we sat in coffee. He's like, I got this idea and this and that, and it's on here, and I'm not really sure, whatever. And here's like a few hats, right? And I was like, I'm in, whatever you're doing. It is so amazing. It is so amazing to see not only his passion, his dedication, his experience in terms of what he's done the last handful of years. It seems like yesterday we were meeting for a coffee on Palmer Square in Princeton. And I'm so privileged and honored to be part of it. It's like a lot of other things I can think of. I'm not doing enough here. But hats off to him and the crew that he's assembled, and to all the ambassadors and everything else. I think that there's so much power behind it, and I think it's snowballing. And I'm just excited, for the future of the Real and what it's going to do in the space, and helping organizations like us out and other organizations out there that are trying to do good in the space.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And for people watching this, I'll put the website on the YouTube channel, but it is thereal.care. There are walks around the world every third Saturday. So if you're interested, you can look this up. And if there's a walk near you, welcome to join or reach out to the organization. It's another great connecting point, doing amazing work that welcomes everyone into community. So there's no need to be alone. There's people who care and doing amazing things, and the Real is a part of that. So Scott, we did start off with talking about Sherrapy, but I'd like to invite you also to fill in any more highlights you'd like to about how it's going, what you're building, what you're looking for, and the needs you're filling. And as you said, I'm smiling a bit, and I wanted to say that because I had a guest on a podcast recently when you were talking about not doing enough. And, it can be always the thing, right? We're not doing enough. We're not fast enough. And yet at the end of the day, it's actually the reality is each person's contribution really is enough. And I guess we had another ambassador, Blake Mikoski, recently, who is the founder of Tom Shoes, who has created an organization called Enough. And it's a very interesting, great organization, reminding us that at our baseline, we are enough, but then hopefully we can build on our dreams and try to bring out into the world our ideas and our efforts but in community, like you're connecting people, Scott. And so, anyway, I wanted to say that because I'm just smiling with all these connections of ideas and people really trying to remind everyone that they're that they're not alone, and there are amazing groups to connect with, and give them the hand up to heal if they need healing, and to get back and focusing on the things they care about, the people they care about.
No, yeah, and I'll do a little shout out, because I posted about this the other day. We get a lot of packages at our house, like a lot of people do. Convenience, of online ordering, Amazon, all that stuff. I don't order a lot and I don't get a lot, but one showed up the other day. I was like, oh, who could this be from? And it was from Blake and Mark, and I'm wearing my bracelet. I am so honored to be on it. I've been, and I'll share a little bit more about it in terms of where we are and kind of where I believe we can go and what we've done. But I've, with the holidays and with just, managing my own anxiety, depression, and, trying to, plan for the holidays, the kids, do everything for Sherrapy, set some time up with you. Like, I've had a couple kind of weird moments, and I'm so glad that I have this on, right? I don't need a rubber band to kind of snap me out of it. I love this.
Right.
Thanks for Blake and
I,
Mark for sending it. Yeah.
yeah. And
So,
thank you. Yeah, thanks to Blake and Mark as well. I actually, it's interesting. I had it on. I took a shower and I've put it left on the table upstairs. So I got to put it back on. But
yeah. So I'll dig in. So yeah. So we, I talked to you about the start of it, like kind of like my ideas behind Sherrapy. Was blessed to come up with what we think and what I've been told is a pretty incredible name. Was fortunate to do early on, being like, there might be something here. I know there's something here. Let's get it trademarked, all this sort of stuff. A lot of these things you go through and you're trying to kind of figure out, okay, is this something I can jump into? I was heavily I've been involved in the mortgage space for 25, 26 years. So, tested it out a little bit, built a platform, hosted some get-togethers. We like to say get-togethers because, we all have a lot of meetings, right? And we don't say, hey, Jeff, we should have a meeting more often, right? It's like we should get together more often. So all these things would seem like sometimes trivial, but it's all kind of stacking, the brand and everything. And, we had some good involvement with folks. And, kind of about 2 years ago, a college teammate of mine who now has been our COO for the last couple of years sat down. He's like, I kind of get it, but I don't get it. Let's sit and have, a cup of coffee. And he did. And I explained it to him. He goes, why aren't you scaling this? And I'm like, well, I was thinking like, well, I know we have something, but I've got a wife, 2 kids, this other job. I don't have anybody's help, and I had, X amount of runway. Right. So that's when we actually did the conversion, to C Corp to be able to raise money. And that's where we set out about 2 years ago. We're in pre-seed. We've raised some money. We've, like a lot of other startups, we're not where we thought we would be. But I can tell you one thing, with bringing on some people, I think we're positioned better than we were 6 months ago, definitely better than a year ago. Our community is growing. There's more involvement. There's more specific types of communities and gatherings being held, everything from grief to leaders group, which all kind of go into the premise of having a place for people to share their experience and learn from others, right? So we're in a great position there. I think like a lot of startups, whether you're starting up today, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't even know where to classify us in terms of we're fully operational. We're helping people. When I say I don't believe we're helping enough people, that's going to be myself beating myself up, right? But it's incredible to see with people we brought on. We brought on a great partnership. Christine Passel, you can see a lot of stuff that she's putting out there. Tasso Muteros, who's came on board as our COO. We've got a pretty lean, mean team here, and people that have recently joined that are really, really jazzed about what we're doing and know the need for it. And like anything else, to keep things growing, to keep, refining our platform a little bit and our offerings. It's a lot of balls to juggle with, 2 or 3 people. So, we need to raise money. We're actively raising money, and we feel that while it's been challenging, the word's getting out there, we're having more people engage, and we just got to knock on more doors. So money doesn't, cure everything, but it definitely helps, especially building a business and being able to scale it the way we think we can scale it.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Well, again, for those viewing this podcast, and it'll be staying on YouTube, there'll be a link to Scott's website. And so if you have an interest in the business side and, potentially getting involved as an investor or talking to Scott and the team, then, you'll know where to go. I wanted to shift gears for a moment because, as you know, that the underlying premise of this initiative too is to try to shatter stigma. And for me, stigma is almost a baseline of, that weight that certainly it crushed me when I was in the hospital, and for a while later to try to just not to protect, my family to get my career back. And 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when, it was even less, I think, discussed. But I wanted to get your views on stigma and what's happening in society with stigma, and what's more positive about shattering stigma, maybe through your work, through the work of others at The Real and others that but just any comments or observations on stigma and where we're going to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. Stigma exists in outside of, obviously the mental health space, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of other things. I think when it comes to overall stigma in terms of what, our ecosystem, it's, great question. I think it's a battle, right? I think a lot of people would agree, like there shouldn't be stigma about it. There's enough people out there doing good things and platforms and companies, this podcast, what you do with work, what I do with work, what Sean's doing with work, I think, there's a long way to go. I don't think that it'll ever be eliminated. That's just human, we're humans, right? You're going to have, things are going to be stigmatized. I do think though, that, the more we can have people share their stories, whether it's a little bit about it, the better. It's that snowball effect, right? The more podcasts like this, the more entities like The Real, like Sherrapy, like Brighton, right? Our friend Jeff.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. He does great work.
It's incredible work, and it's an uphill battle, but it's like, we need to build the army behind it and these things. And no matter how we put it out there, I think for me, I probably I wasn't vocal about everything because I didn't understand it, right? I think once I started sharing my story, I just felt a relief. It's not like I had a gazillion dollars sitting in the bank where I was like, I wasn't fearful of losing my job, but I just felt a little bit more at ease with sharing parts of my story. And now I'll share pretty much everything, right? If I believe that any part of my story over the last 54 years could help somebody out, right? Not to have to go through stuff. So stigma, I believe, is, it takes time. It takes, entities like The Real and 500 plus ambassadors and growing and growing and growing. It takes this podcast. It takes Jeff's podcast. It takes other, companies like Sherrapy doing the work that, maybe normalizes, the mental health and awareness, and maybe gets people a little bit less, I don't want to say provoked, but a little bit less to pass judgment on people
absolutely.
who might be suffering. And maybe it might implore people to give it some thought before sharing or expressing their, negative feelings towards mental health and wellness.
Right.
It's just a lot there. Sorry if there's a lot of pieces in that, but
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and I didn't mention this particular question. I didn't mention any particular questions to you in advance because I like just to have a conversation here. And so it is challenging in different ways. I mean, I'm thinking about it all the time because it's the core of what I'm trying to do, but there's a million angles to come at it. I mean, for me, what has worked is the simple bench press analogy because it's a great equalizer. If you do this exercise with 45 pounds, you can be the strongest offensive lineman in the NFL. You also are going to get pinned. If you do it until you can't move, you have a breaking point. And we had a guy who was Hugo Giral, who was named the strongest man in the world in 2002 when he won several world strongman competitions. There's video of him online pulling a 737, and he was saying, yeah, absolutely. It's actually smart to ask for help when you're in trouble. And we all do in our lives for different things unrelated to mental health. And he said it's a sign of strength. And this is just one way. I'm trying to bring one way. There's a lot of different angles. There's no magic formula, but it is one experiential exercise that as athletes we can understand. You go and lift 45 pounds, you will eventually be shaking and people will be like, that's a joke. It's not a joke because you've been doing 150 reps and you're not superhuman, where none of us are, right? So,
and especially with mental health, right? People don't see all the stuff that they see you at a certain point in time. Even people you work with closely for years, they don't see you when you go home. They don't see when you're out of the work. So they don't see a lot of that stuff, right? I love the bench stuff because, if you walked in and you just saw this big guy struggling with 45 pounds.
It's a joke. You think?
Yeah. But if you were there for
it's a complete joke.
Yeah, that's where I think like I know it's hard. Like if we could just slow down a little bit in our lives, especially, with the ones closest to us. And it doesn't, not just obviously family and friends, but also coworkers, right? Like, you've got some incredible stories out there about just people like just asking, "Hey, how you doing?" and not, just walking, down the hallway and saying, "No, how are you really doing?" That's changed people's lives, right? And I think that's where, if we can, I always try to slow down, which is hard to do, and we have always, we're bombarded with a lot of things and we take a lot on ourselves, right? But I think it's really just slowing down and being able to be open, not only to share, but also listen to others, because like you don't see all this sort of stuff you don't see the 149 reps that guy just did before he went to his 150th and needed to ask for help. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Scott, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I'd like to welcome you if there's anything else you'd like to say about Sherrapy or any of the other work you're doing, or any comments for our listeners. It's great to talk today, and I'm excited, and I'm hoping that many people will reach out to you over time. I congratulate you for the amazing work you're doing. It is so important, and it's really. It's excellent that you're doing that, and I'm glad to be a fellow ambassador along with all these other hundreds of people. And so, but I want to pass it back to you if there's anything else. Or happy to keep talking for a while too if there's other things you want to talk about. But pass it over to you for whatever you'd like to say.
Yeah, no, I appreciate everything, Jeff, and I'm the time, and we can wrap with just a thanks for you for giving me a platform to share my story. This is really and I was thinking about it. And it's just not an age thing, because we all have different experiences and level of experiences and a lot of things. So it's just not because you're 80, you experience more than somebody who's 50, right? But early on, I always used to think about like, there's so much. There's a big resource out there in this world, which is lived experience, right? And yes, it's gotten easier to write a book or have somebody write it for you. Yes, there's more podcasts out there that you probably can get yourself on, but where do people go like that have this, experience, that can just do it in a safe environment, or they can just be there to listen? Like, where do they go? Because every story is valuable. Right? You never know what you might say. I know it helps me to share my story, and I'm not a neurologist and I can't explain why. I know it's good for you, right? To put the words out there. And that's, what started, like, why can't we build a platform like, your podcast is, where people can share the story. So long story short, I want to thank you for the opportunity to do it. And yeah, everybody, if you want to take a look at our social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, there are opportunities to join our platform. We do offer a free 30-day trial. We do have something in the works now called Getting to Know Sherrapy, where people can join for a little bit longer for free, get a little bit of glimpse of what we're doing. You don't have to put in a credit card, just a name and an email. And it gives them a little bit deeper look at what we're doing kind of behind the curtain. And we've had a tremendous amount of traction with that the last couple of months. All that stuff in terms of what we're doing at Sherrapy, you can find out, like you had mentioned, Sherrapy.com. If people have direct questions for me, Scott@Sherrapy.com is my email. I'm glad to jump on the phone and discuss any and all with anybody who has interest.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again so much, Scott, and happy holidays to you and yours. And it's great to see you and talk to you. And thanks again.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy holidays.
Yeah, take care. Thanks.
Bye.